Part 1. In the Footsteps of Giants. It is most difficult always to remember that the increase of every living creature is constantly being checked by unperceived hostile agencies, and that these same unperceived agencies are amply sufficient to cause rarity and finally extinction. So little is this subject understood that I have heard surprise repeatedly expressed at such great monsters as the mastodon and the more ancient dinosaurians having become extinct, as if mere bodily strength gave victory in the battle of life. Charles Darwin, Origin of Species. Those to follow may wonder about us and our ways, just as we now living wonder about the lost dinosaur civilizations, those reptilian flowerings of the Mesozoic that rose and fell with ponderous solemnity, their stone temples and jumbo roadways ground down by geologic time into fine powder. What remains? Some bones, some baked footprints. But no record of the wars that raged over quaking Gondwana land, that spilled barrels of cold blood from unplated flanks and vulnerable plastrons, that ended as all wars do with the sated victors owning the histories. But of those histories, nothing. And nothing of Saurian art and science, and nothing of the songs and epics of what we might surmise were oral cultures. Yet we cannot know even that for sure. Pulverized, tectonic dross, all traces forever lost to time. So lost, so rubbed out, that these great empires of thunder lizards seem never to have existed. Perhaps they didn't. We'll be lost to time, too, in the briefer years needed to grind us down, for though our leavings fill all spaces, we did not have the eons to pile them so high. Might we have just a few more decades to rule this earth? Rule that for the dinosaurs lasted 1,000,000 centuries, before we, too, wink ourselves out. Those to follow may suppose our empires never existed either. With the dinosaurs we share a heavy step. We come down hard on the earth as we bestride it, colossally, we big-souled clodhoppers. True, all of the lineages of our grand human clan differently tread in different directions with different destinations in mind, or not in mind. Yet together we cut paths every which way, pounding hills flat, bending the sky low, crushing species underfoot, our misdeeds splaying out like entrails from roadkill. Robinson Jeffers put it best, there are no fences, man will do anything. Where did we go astray? Some say Homo sapiens was born lost, rootless by nature. We never had the remotest chance to find ourselves in the first place. Our niche was to ramble aimlessly around the savannah and kill things. What's really changed? And there are so many other delineations of our errant ways. The line that says the world was made machine by our science. That all became cogs, springs, pulleys, and wires. The line that says we forgot what it is to be, wishing only to become. What? Something we are not, I suppose. We have ontological deficit disorder, apparently. Then there's the line that says we squint at the world through eyes stuffed with money, so that all living things come at discount until they are no more, and then they are priceless. Oh, and then there's the line that says we live too much in built environments. We don't get out enough. We're crazy like indoor cats. And I do stipulate to this one, having known such cats and having been one. And there's still room in the case file for new lines that would further refine the contours of our awfulness, and none could be dismissed. Man, thy want is legion, with all thy sins twisted in blood-soaked tapestry, this world as thou made it. Does the Bible say that? Something like that? And if not, shouldn't it? What's up with us? Well, social systems seek to secure and expand their insides by processing items from their outsides. Metals, meals, thoughts, squeals, anything is grist for the mill. The avatars of these systems, people for example, say all sorts of funny things to put a gloss on that processing. Let us hear the litany.
The natural world is disenchanted and socially constructed. It is feminized and demonized and commoditized and lionized. It is not unrealized. The nature you observe reveals the wisdom of the Creator. His the market discipline of Milton Friedman and the Republican Party. Mine the tough love of Emerson and the Oversoul. Where you see a spruce forest, we see 1 billion rolls of toilet paper. Those cypress swamps protect the city from hurricanes. Fish spawn there too. True, but people need their patio furniture. Yo, tree hugger, get a job. The last tiger, rhino, panda. But grinding up his balls, horn, pancreas promotes erections, courage, domestic tranquility. That Grizz will make a great conversation piece in the media room. Somebody's going to brag that Bruin. Why not me? This marsh is where Mulwort must have its new parking lot. Don't you care about jobs for our local construction industry? Unlimited opportunities. Florida's last frontier. I'm worried about the ducks and where I'll shoot them. They don't land on concrete. We are aware of the ecosystem services provided by the groundwater under this moraine. Our plant leaves recharge zones between the roads, sidewalks, driveways, houses, schools, playgrounds, strip malls. Mother Nature approved mountaintop removal, seabed drilling, even-age forestry, tap and drain, cap and trade. Solution to pollution is dilution. Gaia abides in urban wilderness and community gardens. Anwar floats on a sea of oil. This Arctic bonanza can help us get the Arabian monkey off our back and secure Fortress North America. Tar sands equals gooey black gold. We at Monsanto are very concerned about the future of the American farmer. This new application will curtail the growth of leaf blight. Tests have shown it to be effective. Minimal teratomas in animal tissue. EPA agrees. Green Shift and Green Shaft, eco this and eco that. I drive the Escalade because it makes me feel safe riding so high. We've got an active growing family, need room for their gear, and Bob's Golf Clubs too. Starkist wants tuna that tastes good. Yes, it's dolphin safe. Is it tuna safe? I bought a carbon offset, so I'm good to go. There's no contradiction between a strong economy and a clean environment. In fact, you need the former to achieve the latter. No contradiction, no contradiction. Growth is good and growth can be green. We call it natural capitalism. Human beings are part of nature, and so everything they do is natural, including remodel nature. Call it development, sustainable development. Where's the study that shows the teenager bopping down the street to his iPod has greater joie de vivre than his Paleolithic counterpart strutting back to camp with a freshly killed bush pig balanced on his shoulder? The balance of nature, the sacred balance, earth in the balance, a moment on earth, this moment on earth. God gave us this earth. Will we return it in the condition in which we received it?
Part 2, the hot intelligence. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but someday the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. H.P. Lovecraft, The Call of Cthulhu. Theodore Adorno, covert optimist, described the Enlightenment as a progressive regressive process, the simultaneous domination of nature and the cessation of that domination through the achievements of progress. But of course he said it better than that. He said, progress means to step out of the magic spell, even out of the spell of progress that is itself nature, in that humanity becomes aware of its own inbred nature, what brings to a halt the domination it exacts upon nature, and through which domination by nature continues. In this way, it could be said that progress occurs where it ends. Someday, presumably, we'll complete the down payment on this ambivalent progress and get on with utopia. In the meantime, we continue our self-propelled frog march toward that shining city rising from the rubble we've made of nature. We're comfortable generating progress indiscernible from disaster, for the pull of modernity is only the suction from its mucky four-step, not the progress of an arrival anywhere in particular, but just the routine of slogging along. Progress asks a price we willingly pay, for backsliding is intolerable and, mutatis mutandis, a hazard whose solution is to step forward ever harder and faster. If you think it's bad now, just wait till tomorrow, and don't worry, things will get worse. Reveal through irony our baseline confidence in the notion that though shit happens, man is on the march. Progress is the new fatalism. Things may have taken a turn for the worse, but in the end, things work out for the best. One might say, then, that progress is the name given to a peculiar modern smugness, an assumption that our successes will always outpace our disasters. That assumption is made possible in part because of selective historical amnesia. After all, as Milton's Satan observed, "We know no time when we were not as now," which was his way of saying, "I refuse to remember any of the stuff that got me sent straight to hell." We all know how to talk this talk. When it comes to rationalizing history, even the codgers at the local barber shop are Hegelian Schumpeterians, believers in the furtherance of spirit via creative destruction. What? They're tearing down the charter oak to widen the highway. Well, you can't stand in the way of progress. Maybe they'll plant a new one. One can extend this trope as far as one wants. What? They're tearing down the Amazon to plant soybeans. Well, you can't stand in the way of progress. Maybe they'll plant some new forests in Greenland when the ice cap melts. Oh hum. What even Adorno cannot concede is the more terrifying Lovecraftian proposition, which says that the Enlightenment isn't the annihilation of ignorance and the triumph of man, but rather the revelation of the true horror of the universe and our dubious place within it. Progress is not 2 steps forward and 1 back. It's a beeline toward oblivion. You see, from the perspective of the earth, there is no progress, never has been, nor never will be. Human cultures have always and everywhere been cultures of extinction. We can find no exceptions. That's because human social systems build up their own complexity by decomplexifying the natural order of things. They reduce the variety and beauty of ecosystems, swap diversity for monoculture, render organic tissue into inert matter, produce small pockets of negentropy by draining huge reserves of potential energy. We will kill 1,000 birds to feather the king's headdress, put a forest on a pyre to roast a marshmallow. The great philosopher of complexity, Edgar Morin, writes of the blind intelligence that destroys unities and totalities, that isolates all objects from their environment, that cannot conceive of the inseparable link between observer and observed. He's right, of course. To combat this hypersimplification of reality, he believes we must turn to complex thought that doesn't engage in all the bad Cartesian operations. You know the list: reduction, disjunction, abstraction, modes of thought that are, in a sense, anti-ecological. He's wrong, of course. If we were able to put aside those modes, we wouldn't be human, wouldn't be the fierce, hot intelligence that dices up the globe with cutting wisdom. Complex thought, the kind that notices, to paraphrase John Muir, that when one tugs at a single thing in nature, one finds it hitched to everything else, is not human thought. It's the thought of the reclining Buddha or a frog on a lily pad. Yes, the long view shows that our great works and days were blind alleys, the industrial age an accelerated dash toward a brick wall, the Enlightenment merely the self-affirmative rhetoric of a madman. Sustainability is a myth. It is to culture what a new coat of paint is to a nuclear bomb. The whole apparatus of civilization is a Rube Goldberg device that gets us to the zenith point where we can properly view our impossibility as plain members of the earth. What is human progress? It is the progress of a suicide building the gun with which to shoot himself. So I don't believe even complex thought goes far enough because it bases solutions on an adjustment of means to ends. Unfortunately, the means are the ends. We think we will save the earth and ourselves by greening our activity. Ask yourself, taken as a whole, what is our activity but to kill the earth? That's what we do. It's who we are. Our means-end calculus is simple: maximize throughput. Granted, we agreed it would be prudent to curtail our hunger and manage our supplies, as if we were on a long and perilous voyage, which we are, in fact. We preach sustainability, in other words, and we imagine there is a referent for such a concept, but that, too, is only a fiction dreamed up by our warm, wrinkled brain. Complex thought, by any other name, deep green thought, puts a brake on quick judgments and human arrogance. But it has its own faith issues. It has too much faith in its own power of reasoning, faith that its reasons can compel others less reasonable, faith that it can think its way around the underlying horror of our predicament. What's very difficult to accept is that such faith is simply more of the same hot intelligence that put us in these straits. Hard to accept, because why wouldn't we want to get behind our own aspirations? We're an ambitious mammal. We take a lot of pride. We're the big picture. And we've accomplished a lot. Our machines, our sciences, our buildings, our arts. We are the benchmark. We make our history look good. We plane off the rough edges. We're all about clarity, illumination, radiance, scales falling, blinders off. We turn darkness into light. Say what you will of greed, stupidity, and cruelty. We need the sour to taste the sweet. We like the car, the speed and distance. We like the gun, how well it kills. We like the rocket, how it soars, puts eyes above us to look down on us, looking up like self-discipled gods, the power and glory of us. So now if we must be humble, well, we can do humble too. There's nothing close to our smarts, so we think, including saving ourselves from our prideful reach. I feel it too. I can't get shut of my pride. Am I not as the trees and the stars? Am I not noble-spirited? Who says I cannot limit myself? Can I not stoop to conquer? Godlike I am, self-begotten and self-sustaining. That hubris, well known to the Greeks, is still our folly. So we must step back from it, if we can. Step right back out of history and the faith that history is taking us somewhere special. Don't argue. Don't look to trace the justifications and proposals and counter-proposals, the plans and solutions and hypotheses. Just describe. Step back out of reason itself, out of the human flame that burns all it comprehends. Step out of mankind. What would an alien see, is the question. What would the record look like to some vast, cold intelligence out in the galactic spiral arm, with a powerful telescope observing, recording, for the last 25,000 years? Say what the alien would see, the cold intelligence. I think it would disdain all the narratives, all of them. Our human story is simpler than we like to make it. It's not even a story, it's just an effect, the effect of hot intelligence. The hot intelligence expands. It flows over fields, oceans, forests, skies, near space, far space, inner space. It probes earth, ore, petroleum, guano, freshwater, saltwater. It learns, adapts, strengthens, ideates, and technologizes. Where it meets resistance, it measures, switches, retreats, returns, outflanks, slaughters. Its answers to all problems of density, pressure, waste, exhaustion is to move on. Go elsewhere. Shake chains in the wilderness. Renew. It steps forth. It sends out wagon trains, frigates, Lewis and Clark. It raises temples and skyscrapers. It organizes missions, relays messages to the outback and beyond, asks about gold or phosphate or timber. It finds an anchorage. There builds a wharf, a warehouse, a sewer open to the sea. It climbs a mountain. There carves a ski run, a president's face, a gun emplacement. Then it cracks the mountain and sucks the marrow. It thinks in terms of housing starts, workers served, units sold, bodies counted. The hot intelligence wants to forge ahead, survey the landscape, and stake it out before cooler heads arrive. But when those misgivings pop up, it's already too late. Reluctance is converted to more heat because there's no turning back. The safety fires are leapt. The sparks go treetop to treetop. Subterranean coal seams ignite. The very oxygen in the air is aflame. The hot intelligence is fired up and ready to go. Scour the land, boil the brook, heap up the new city on the ashes of the old. The grass is greener on the golf course in the next valley. As R. Crumb suggested, keep on trucking. The hot intelligence once seemed fated to secure dominion over the earth, but this dark dominion turns out to be ungovernable. From Aristotle to Bacon to Matthew Arnold, from Plato's cave to Kennedy's moonshot, the call was put out for more light, more progress, more everything. True, there have always been those who saw the final stage of progress as decline and death, more finally bringing less, the least, in fact, nada. But even doomsayers usually credited humanity with some sort of cosmic purpose, even if that purpose ended in glorious collapse. Nobody could quite bring themselves to believe that the worm of civilization could simply hollow out its apple and be left with nothing to reside in but its own decaying corpulence. No good reason for that sad end other than an unquenchable appetite bent on ravening past all limits. This is the hot intelligence, a brain that burns all its fuel before burning itself. Part 3. Beyond Hope. The basis of optimism is sheer terror. Oscar Wilde, The Picture of Dorian Gray. It increasingly appears that our super-civilization was merely a catafalque, an elaborate platform raised up to display a corpse. And the corpse is the planet itself. Where to go from here? Can we end the malignancy of our minds, our societies, our planetary civilization? Can we phase shift from heavy to light, hard to soft? Maybe you hold out some hope. But we're such ungainly, blundering steppers, don't forget. Angry, too, and maybe a little self-loathing. Picture a boot coming down on a fragile-shelled snail for 1,000 years. That's us, the boot and the snail. Well, could we be hardening up under our own stomping? Even if we are, here's the problem. Contra Nietzsche, what makes us stronger finally does kill us. Our brutal high step has run out of planet. As our ways of being press into every last nook and cranny, the horizon of moderation curves back on itself and closes in. Truly, we are arrived at some kind of conclusion. And there is nothing in the totality of things human that can be counted out as an end-bringing prime cause. Bipedalism, fire, agriculture, irrigation, catapults, capitalism, greed, guns, steel, religion, refrigeration, nuclear fission, the fight game, Hollywood, hogs, dogs, smogs, your house and 401k, my electric car and compost barrel, a trail through a swamp, a single ivory key on a piano, a drop of gasoline. If you take my meaning, perhaps you'll understand why I feel comfortable in framing a true tautology. Our world, the human-made world, is now everything that is the world. That means it includes its own comeuppance. It radiates its negation in all its parts, even in outposts like Bhutan or an anthill fanning out from a crack in the sidewalk. We can't take a step into the wilderness without drawing its contradiction, a chainsaw, a pipeline, a plan. You yourself are the bearer of that provenance, with your boots on the ground, boots on the neck of the world. You step heavily, whether you're Thoreau or the CEO of Exxon, for things to be otherwise, for you to tiptoe in and out, leaving nothing but moccasin prints, which is to say, doing no harm. Well, that would have required a different path, not the one we've traveled on so far, and what's worse, not even a path we could get to from here. Hang on to that hope, right? Isn't that what we must keep alive? Today, we're like a lone ocean voyager suddenly deprived of the stars, deprived of a navigable world. Hope is that which tells us the stars will return. But hope has a rhetoric too. It's just another of those crucial figures of humanist vanity, one that works hand in glove with its peer progress to manufacture an acceptable framing of the horrific present so as to anticipate the always-on-the-way better future to come. No work of environmentalism or eco-criticism is complete without the note of hope, the healing words that begin when the intolerable truth-telling ends. Yet when I see the work of people like blah, 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 I am filled with hope about the future of blah, blah, blah. John Gray notes that, like trembling Victorians terrified of losing their faith, these humanists cling to the moth-eaten brocade of progressive hope, held fast by the conventional wisdom of the time and in the grip of unexamined dogmas. Hope, I think, acts as a purgative of the imagination, evacuating the urgencies of the present in the same way that the promise of an afterlife did for our forebears. There is nothing audacious about hope. It's simply the last and most pathetic form of automatic prayer. Hope misleads because it allows us to imagine the present crisis is an aberration, that the way past ecocide is to press forward. But it does little good to hope that the storm will pass and the stars will come out again, for as Benjamin memorably had it, the storm is progress itself, blowing in out of paradise, not a chain of events, but one single catastrophe which keeps piling wreckage upon wreckage. And so we haughty humans find ourselves at the center of everything, ringed by our own fire. We ask, who else but ourselves? Where do we go from here? We thumb through our tattered book of hope, searching for the power-bringing words, mumbling, we shall overcome, and you ain't seen nothing yet. So futile are these hopes, the death rattles of a futile culture with futile pretensions to a futile dominion, that they would be laughable if they weren't so dangerous. Just ask Derek Jensen, who writes, the more I understand hope, the more I realize that instead of hope being a comfort, that all along it deserved to be in the box with the plague, sorrow, and mischief, that it serves the needs of those in power as surely as a belief in a distant heaven, that hope is really nothing more than a secular version of the same old heaven nirvana mindfuck. The slow-motion collapse of the planet ought to prompt not a can-do optimism but dread and despair. As the cold intelligence would tell us, "Oh, your planet will survive all right. It's just that you won't." But the fevered dream that is human culture does not know how to do anything but spin its prayer wheels. As Emerson explained, our politics consists of the party of hope and the party of memory. Between the shores of those two positions, there is precious little leeway for anything else. Even eco-critics, environmentalists, and other do-gooders cling to the raw nature that was, or point to the renewed nature to come. But neither what was nor what might be faces full-on what is. We are carrying on as if we weren't already extinct. What we need before hope is fear.
Love you, but long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about it. God only knows what I'd be without you. If you should ever leave me, well, life would still go on, believe me. The world could show nothing to me, so what good would living do me? God only knows what I'd be without you. Life would still go on, believe me. The world could show nothing to me, so what good would living do me? God only knows what I'd be without you. And God only knows what I'd be without you. God only knows what I'd be without. God only knows what I'd be without. God only knows what I'd be without.